All right, this explainer is based on material from soysefardi.org, and we're about to jump into a fascinating intellectual battle from the 19th century. It's a story about one man standing against a powerful movement that wanted to, well, basically dismantle his ancient faith in the name of progress.
And the man at the center of it all is this remarkable scholar, Rabbi Eliyahu Benamozegh. See, he found himself in a tough spot, defending thousands of years of tradition against a brand new idea that threatened to unravel the whole thing.
And this really gets to the heart of the issue at the time. Is tradition an obstacle to being modern? I mean, with industrialization and new ways of thinking, a lot of people started looking at ancient religious practices and thinking, this stuff is just holding us back. And that's the central conflict of our story today.
So, to really get why Benamozegh's defense was so powerful, we first have to understand what he was up against. And believe me, it was a huge challenge to tradition, an idea that was just sweeping across Europe.
Okay, so starting around the 1840s, you have the Reform movement, and their core argument was pretty simple. Judaism is outdated. Their fix? Let's modernize it. And by modernize, they meant stripping away specific rituals, getting rid of ancient commandments, and leaving just this kind of universal ethical code. The goal, really, was to make it easier to fit into mainstream European society.
And listen, they were not talking about small changes here. The things they saw as outdated were the absolute bedrock of Jewish life. We're talking about circumcision, observing the Sabbath, the dietary laws, even the daily ritual of tefillin. To the reformers, these weren't sacred traditions, they were barriers, and they had to come down.
So, into this massive debate steps our guy. But before we get into what he said, you have to understand where he came from, because it shaped everything. He was from this really unique community, the Sephardic haven of Livorno, Italy.
You see, Livorno wasn't just some random city. It had this long, proud history as a safe harbor for Sephardic Jews. They were granted religious freedom way back in the late 1500s. By 1650, it was a huge center for Hebrew printing and scholarship. This was the confident, deeply traditional world Eliyahu Benamozegh was born into.
And Benamozegh himself? Wow, just sheer intellectual firepower. His family came from Morocco, another great center of Sephardic learning. He lost his father at a young age, so his uncle raised him, and it was clear he was a prodigy. I mean, he got his rabbinic ordination at just 18 and mastered 5 languages. This guy was more than ready for the fight to come.
So, how does a scholar like this push back against the idea that his faith is obsolete? Well, he didn't just play defense, he built an intellectual fortress, and he called it the Eternal Covenant.
And this was his central point. It's actually so brilliantly simple. He just completely rejected the terms of the debate. He said, look, you're asking the wrong question. The Torah isn't supposed to be modern. It's not supposed to be outdated. Its power, its whole value, lies in the fact that it's eternal. It exists outside of whatever's trendy in human history.
He laid this all out in his 1867 book, Jewish and Christian Morality. And pay attention to that subtitle, a comparative examination. That's so important. He wasn't just going to defend Judaism on its own terms, he was going to put it head-to-head with Christianity.
And this is where his argument gets really, really audacious. He didn't just say Judaism was still relevant. Nope. He argued that it was the complete original system, and that its famous offshoots had only grabbed bits and pieces.
Just take a look at this quote right from his book. He calls Christianity a fragmented Hebrewism. He's basically saying it took all the spiritual ideas, but left behind the practical, day-to-day laws and structures that make Judaism a complete system for actually living in the world.
And this comparison here just lays it all out. He saw Judaism as the whole package. It integrates the spiritual, the social, and the political. But in his view, Christianity took one piece of that puzzle, the spiritual stuff, while Islam took another piece, the social and political stuff. He argued that both were, in a way, incomplete versions of the original blueprint.
So you have to understand how totally unheard of this argument was back then. At a time when so many Jewish thinkers were trying to get accepted by saying, hey, we're just like you, Benamozegh steps up and says, actually, Judaism is the source, and these other huge world religions are fragmentary imitations. I mean, that took immense intellectual courage. So what's his legacy? Why are we talking about this 19th century Italian rabbi today? Why does this rediscovered giant of a thinker still matter? Well, the source we've been using, soysefardi.org, puts it perfectly. They call him a gigantic Sephardic sage who gave so much to modern Jewish thought, and yet was completely forgotten. For a long time, he really was this overlooked pillar, a true giant who was just waiting to be rediscovered. And that really leaves us with a final thought, doesn't it? Rabbi Benamozegh's story was just sitting there, waiting for people to find it again. And it really makes you wonder, whose stories are still out there that we haven't found yet? And what important ideas are we missing out on?
Just so you know, this explainer was based on an article from soysefardi.org, and they cite halaja.org as their source.
And if you want to dig a little deeper yourself, you can easily verify this. Just check out the entries for Benamozegh, Elijah in the Jewish Virtual Library and on encyclopedia.com.
Thanks so much for tuning in. This has been a publication of the soysefardi.org portal.